Hi there, and welcome to this episode of To and Froe with the Merrimack Historical Society. I'm your host, Wendy Thomas, and today we have John Listowka in the room, and he's got a great story to tell. Now, just to set the scene for this story, part of this story that you'll be seeing, the video, is actually taped underneath a house. And it's also taped during a torrential rainstorm. This is not the first time we've done filming during bad weather, and I'm sure it won't be the last either. It's always kind of fun doing these episodes. But anyway, so John, tell us about not the significance of moving this house, but also the significance of the people that were involved in the move.
Well, this has actually got a real historic story. Yeah, you know, here we are with the Historical Society. I talk with Chuck about historic things, and we wanted to do a film on the move of number 3 schoolhouse on Depot Street. I thought my dad moved it, which he did, but one of the members of the society said, nope. Someone else moved that house, and it was Clayton Todd's father, Arthur Todd. And I'm going, well, my father used to work with Arthur Todd, but I didn't know about it. So she says, Clayton's still alive. I said, oh, geez, let's call him. So I called him, and we set up this arrangement about telling the story about Schoolhouse 3. How did it come about and move? Its whole history. And then out of the blue, I talked with my cousin Bill last week, and he was moving a house here in Merrimack at the Rivet Funeral Parlor. I said, Bill, any chance of getting a few shots of you moving the house, and we'll add it to the Schoolhouse 3 story. It's all in the family. It's Bill Listowka, John Listowka, Chuck Mower's dad, and then Clayton Todd was around. So that's really the meat of the story. So we were trying to make the impact of a historic moment with Schoolhouse 3. And it really took on a whole different meaning on Monday when we filmed it.
When the original crew was back together.
Yeah.
Now, there's Clayton's dad built a vehicle to move the house. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, Clayton's dad, Arthur Todd, built this trailer, and it was a low bed trailer that the dollies or the wheels would come off it. So it'd be very, very shallow, and he could back this trailer under a building with no wheels on it. Mm-hmm. And then put needles across the top of the trailer that would catch the edges of the building, and then they would jack the trailer up, and the whole building would come up. When they did that, they put rollers under it, and they'd roll it off the foundation with a truck hooked to it. You know, it'd just be like a trailer truck.
Right.
So we roll it off the foundation. When it's off the foundation, they'd put the wheels back under the trailer, then they could tow it down the road. That's what Arthur Todd did. And it was an extra wide trailer that could carry very heavy loads. And that's how they moved Schoolhouse 3.
Well, and I was talking to Clayton, and basically the technology, and Bill, the technology for moving a house really hasn't changed much from the very beginning.
No.
Tell me a little bit about that. Well, I mean, you just explained it, but you have to pick the house, literally pick it up off the foundation.
Right. So I'll just give you a little bit of history. They used to do this in the 1700s and 1800s all the time. They jack up brick buildings using wooden beams and screw jacks. So to screw a jack, they'd stick a long bar in it, and they'd pull it. Yeah. And the house would go up like a quarter of an inch. They'd pull it again, and they'd do that with a whole bunch of men around. And eventually they get it up high enough to put wooden rollers under it. Uh-huh. They'd be round logs. And they would take those rollers, and we used to call it a shoe, that shoe would sit on top of the rollers and the building would sit on top of the shoe. And you could put these like round logs in, and the building, even though it's heavy, it moves easy. It'll just roll along, and if you wanted to turn a corner, you'd turn the log. And then it'd go right around the corner. No wheels or anything. And they'd pull it with oxen or draft horses. And they'd use something called a dead man and blocking tackles. In fact, that's how they pull the covered bridges over the river. It's the same thing, same concept. So what happened is they went from screw jacks to what they call railroad jacks, little jacks with teeth in it. Click, 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 up it'd go. It was a big advancement in technology. And then it went to hydraulic jacks. And now the ones that Bill had, he just pulls the starter on an engine, fires up this hydraulic system, and he can have 6, 8, 10, 12 jacks all go up at the same time, lifting different weights of the building, all in unison.
The same thing.
They've come a long ways.
Well, they have come a long way. And the building that we saw moved at the Rivet Funeral Home, they had long steel beams. So we don't use logs anymore.
Well, those are still used. Oh,
they're still used?
They don't use the wooden ones. They use 4-inch heavy-duty steel pipes.
Oh, I see.
They still use that. Bill's got the higher-end stuff.
So not only is moving a house a scientific application, because you have to be sure about lifting it up equally, so you don't crack things, but it really is an art, isn't it?
It is an art.
It's close to being a lost art.
It is, and I was just thinking of a telephone building that was moved in Chicago back in the 1920s. It was a 12-story building that had held all the communications of Chicago. And they kept the people working in it, and they pivoted the whole thing 180 degrees and moved it out 400 feet and set it back down. No one skipped a beat.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So it's common.
It's a fascinating aspect of the town's history, and to see it still in effect today was just amazing. It's just amazing that they could take this building, move it off the foundation, and the whole idea is they're going to repair the foundation, put a new one in, and then they're going to move the house back in. Yep. And there's not going to be damage.
None.
And so there was no damage with the schoolhouse, correct, when it was moved?
None.
Yeah. That's the art part.
It is. It really is, and it's really pretty exciting. In the part of history, of course, is my family. My father started moving houses in the 1930s, and then my cousin Bill's still doing it today. I worked with my dad until I was 22.
Wow.
So.
And you're all great friends because of a house.
We are.
Because of moving a house. Okay, so now we're going to look at some video that was taken with Clayton, Bill, and John, and Chuck at the house. But they're going to be talking about the old schoolhouse in the videos.
Oh, the prideful architecture of a 19th century school. Our little schoolhouse number 3 in Reed's Ferry. These are our predecessors. These are the people that built our town and came before us. And there are still a few people around that remember attending school there. But in 1951, there was a need to move this school, and so it lumbered out onto Route 3, onto a great flatbed, waddling back and forth as it slowly crept down Route 3. What a marvelous thing and exciting for a small boy like I was to witness. My goodness, we had never seen anything quite so exciting. And so it came, down to where Exit 12 is now, something called the Manor Bar, which is now Axel's Ice Cream. Bedford Road had not been cut through here at that point. And so, as you can see the men following the building, watching it carefully, making sure nothing went wrong, and then it dipped down into Fred Smith's field. And isn't it interesting that we look in the background here and we see a Trailways bus. We still had bus service in those days that we don't even have today. And so it came out and across the field where they needed a little extra help from a bulldozer. And across over to the waiting hole home it was going to occupy. And there it sat until it was moved by the men that moved big things. The general contractor on this job was Arthur Todd, who you see on the left. Arthur was a very established building mover, and he had a crew of people that knew how to do these things, including the gentleman in the center, whose name was Johnny Lester, who we now know was John Listoka. And he was an up-and-coming building mover, but he didn't have the equipment and the permits and the established reputation that Arthur Todd did. But there weren't many people doing these kinds of things, and they all worked together. And so we have this wonderful record of Arthur Todd, who lived in Reed's Ferry, and Johnny Lester, who lived in Merrimack, and provided this forward motion for our public school system. And here was the location of our new number 3 school, a lovely little 2-room schoolhouse, waiting for the doors to open and occupy kids for education. It lasted a decade or so in the school district until development forced us to expand in many ways. And when there was no longer a use for this building as a classroom, it was rented to the PTA for a kindergarten program that lasted 60 years. And now it is the home of the Merrimack Historical Society.
We're standing under the house that has just been moved. It was a house that was on the side of the parking lot, the Rivet Funeral Home. And this is Clayton Todd and John McCallum, Historical Society, and we just in the middle of a thunderstorm. So we're going to try to speak loudly. But they're going to talk about the significance of moving houses in Merrimack with regard to the history of Merrimack. And then we're going to talk specifically about this house. So, go ahead.
All right. Well, what I'd like to do is start out saying that this video is going to be about number 3 schoolhouse. That was moved by what I thought was my father. And then one of the ladies in part of our membership said, nope, Arthur Todd moved that house. And I'm going, nope, I got a picture of it right here. It's my dad. And she says, well, his son, Clayton Todd, is still alive, and he lives in Amherst. I said, give me his phone number. Oh, good. And I called Clayton, and we talked about this story, and the building we're in now is my cousin Bill Listoka is actually moving it for Rivet Funeral Home, and so that's kind of how I got to meet Clayton. So, Clayton, can you tell us a little bit about your dad?
Well, he was one of the, he's always kind of been in the trucking business, and right after the Second World War, he was one of the few people that had a low bed, and they did stop moving small houses on the low bed, and then he actually built a special trailer with moving rear wheels that started moving other houses at that time. And the schoolhouse number three, he did move that from the present location. The location that was at Route 3 in that was Reed's Ferry. I call it Reed's Ferry, to a location on Depot Street. Now, at that time I was a teenager, but I still used to help him, and I think that's why John's dad got involved, because in those days, if you had people helping you, those to help doing these projects. And fortunately, that's how John and I got to meet to talk about this place in Merrimack. I lived in Merrimack for a number of years and went to school there.
So, okay, so both of you have been at this site watching them move the house. How is it different from back then when they moved schoolhouse number 3? I mean, they didn't have these kind of equipment that we have now. So, what are the differences?
They had screw jacks back in the days. They was like a big screw. They put it on a prison like the house was going to see on the film, and they'd turn it and they'd move it up and into the screw on the strip. But the beams weren't metal, steel beams, they were wooden beams. And Clary's father, Arthur, had one of the biggest low beds in southern New Hampshire. And that's why it allowed him to move houses.
And when you say low bed, what do you mean?
It's like a trailer that's below the ground, and you carry bulldozers or big loads in. And his father had one of the only permits in southern New Hampshire, and maybe all of New Hampshire, to be able to haul loads like that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and that particular trailer that we're talking about, the moved schoolhouse, he purposely built that, and that's all that trailer did. He had regular low beds, but he built this trailer with the removable rear wheels, and he took the wheels off and jacked the building up, and then pulled the trailer underneath the building, jack up the trailer onto the house, and then drive it off. You have to give it up over the foundation, you pull it out, it's over it, so down and on.
Right.
So let's talk about the foundation. This house, the reason it's being moved is the foundation is faulty. It leaks and it needs to be rebuilt. When they move the schoolhouse, does the house just sit on the foundation? How do you get it off the foundation?
Well, actually, we're standing all along the beams right here.
Yeah.
You put beams in. These are called needles that I'm touching right now.
Yeah.
And they sit on top of the main beam that we jack up. So you jack the two main beams up, and the needles go up in it, and they're all pinned for the house, and the house goes up and sits right on these things.
So now I've seen pictures of houses being moved where they have logs and they just kind of roll the house. That's like old school. Nobody does that anymore, right?
Well, just little farmers.
Yeah, the Amish may do that out in the Midwest.
Right.
But it's a lot easier when you've got a truck.
Well, we live in the days of Wilson.
Yeah.
So all of these beams, mostly screws, everything is a commercial product, not something that we made in somebody's shop.
All right. So it's very expensive to move a house or a building. So why would one move the house or building instead of just rebuilding a new one?
Well, it's just the opposite. It's not that expensive.
Okay.
So it's more cost effective to have a building like the one we're standing in that it's perfectly functioning, all rebuilt over the last 10 or 20 years, just to jack it up and move it over. It took a half an hour to take this off the foundation.
Half an hour. Yeah.
Yep. And it took about a day and a half to jack it off the foundation.
Yeah.
So all we're going to do is roll it back on again, another half an hour, and then set it down.
So I was talking to Mark Rivet, who owns this building, and he was saying that I think in the 1960s there was a fire that went through it used to be a flat roof building, and there was a fire that went through the roof and they put in a pointed roof. You know, so there's been money invested in this building. So I guess it's a solid building.
Right. It is. And I went under it, and I'm looking at all the air conditioning, like for the mini split, a lot of infrastructure for Ethernet and like a regular LAN network business.
Yeah.
There's besides the solid house, it's really going well.
So once they rebuild the foundation, they just slide this back over on top of it, and there you go, you're done?
They're going to build the foundation, yep.
Yeah.
They'll roll this over the foundation, and they'll set it down just like they jacked it up. They'll pull all these things out. That'll be done in a day.
A day.
A day, easy.
Absolutely amazing. It's amazing that this is being done.
2 guys.
Two guys have done all of this?
Yeah.
Wow.
My cousin Bill is 78.
He's one of the guys?
He's one of the kids.
There you go. Well, it's really, we're standing in the front entranceway, which is why we can stand up. But it's just amazing that this can be done. And the house it's not, as far as I can tell, it hasn't cracked or anything, nothing, no damage to it.
No,
It's an amazing operation.
Yeah.
And it's being done basically the same way it was done when they moved the schoolhouse.
Exactly.
Just a little different equipment. That's
Yeah.
it. Just updated equipment.
Yeah.
Everything, like John said, everything's kind of approved, and a lot of things that are you can buy already made. The trailer my dad moved with, he built it himself. He welded it together himself. He went and got to a salvage yard and got the wheels and stuff. But nowadays, everything you can buy already pre-made.
So when the schoolhouse was moved, it obviously needed a new foundation, and that's what that basement is. That's newly poured and everything.
With the cement block.
Yeah, okay. Who did that?
Probably a contractor, my father wasn't a mason, he'd hire stuff out. I'm sure it's the same with your dad.
Yeah.
They had people that laid blocks or poured concrete, just like today.
Yeah.
Just like today. But the amazing part of the history of what we're looking at now is that the two people that actually moved Schoolhouse 3,
Yeah.
his father and my father, we're standing here in front of you, and my cousin Bill is still in the house moving business. And then the person that took all the photos of Schoolhouse 3 was Chuck Muller's dad.
Oh,
So we're all here today.
so it's the next generation.
So yeah,
That's something,
it's kind of like the stars align, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
we got good friendships out of it,
Right.
too.
Yeah. I never knew that Chuck's dad had all those pictures. You know.
Oh.
Yeah.
I had some pictures I took with a Brownie Hawkeye.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
You know.
back in the day.
That's funny.
So,
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and you'll be seeing some of these photos that we're talking about throughout the show, especially the one with John's dad, and your dad is in that photo too.
Right.
Yeah. About how many houses are moved?
lots.
Lots?
A lot, yeah. Today, it costs a lot of money to move the wires, so
Yeah.
when you see a project like this, jack it up, roll it off the foundation for the new foundation, roll it back. But a large majority are camped on lakes. They
Oh,
took
yeah.
little summer homes that were put on like wooden posts. They jack those up, dig the foundation out,
Oh.
and now they got a full foundation higher.
Yeah.
They get more room, so that,
Well, this is it's really interesting to see this in action. It will be. When will this be completed? It's a couple of weeks, right?
as soon as they can put a foundation.
Got to stop raining before that happens.
We only videotape in the rain.
I know.
Yeah.
We keep getting stuck in storms, but that's part of the job.
Yeah.
Excuse me. No, this is it's just an incredible story. It's an incredible opportunity to be under a house like this.
Yeah.
A little more history.
A little more
Yeah.
history.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Definitely more history. Okay. Okay, so now I'm here with Chuck, who has a lot of knowledge about the history of moving schoolhouse number 3, which this obviously is not schoolhouse number 3, but it's the same sort of idea of moving houses. But Chuck is going to give us some background on specifically schoolhouse number 3, which is the Merrimack Historical Society building now.
Oh, thanks, Wendy. When I was 2 years old, we moved from Pearson Road down to 4 Depot Street, where I still reside to this day. And they had already torn down the McGaw Normal Institute, but they were preparing the foundation for a new building. Of course, at the tender age of 3, I didn't really know what that was, but my father forced us all to pick up nails from the old McGaw, all the old square nails. He was a gentleman of the old school, and he thought that they were valuable. And so we spent a lot of days looking into the cellar hole and waiting to see what on earth was going to happen. And sure enough, the day came, and my father took us all by the hand with his camera. We went up the street there, Daniel Webster Highway, and we began to see this monstrous building, the size of which a 3-year-old had never seen before. Slowly, ever so slowly, turn itself out onto Daniel Webster Highway, and down the highway it came. And we just kind of ran to keep ahead of it and kept taking pictures. And my father, for once in his life, didn't cut everybody's head off. He had nice pictures. So it turned into the old Lane Manor, which was in those days still a working hotel, restaurant, inn. And then suddenly swang to the left and out into Raymond Smith's field, where Merrimack Meadows is today. And down across the field they went, inch by inch, foot by foot, with us running along beside them. marveling at the excitement of this huge building being moved, and of course, finally being turned and settled onto the foundation that had been prepared at 10 Depot Street to replace the old McGaw Normal Institute. And it remained useful in the school district, regular curriculums for a number of years. I went to 3rd grade there. My sister went to 4th grade up the road. My brother went to 3rd grade there as well. I had Evelyn Shorey for a teacher. My brother had Madeline Bennett.
Oh.
And lo and behold, the expansion of the town takes place, and new school facilities and additions and so forth. And ultimately, it became somewhat of an anomaly for the school district. And they rented it to the PTA kindergarten for 61 years. And then it very fortunately came into the possession of the Merrimack Historical Society. So there are wonderful stories of people that came in and out of that school for all of those years. Some of them still living right here in Merrimack. We'd love to hear their stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's amazing to me is that your dad, John's dad, and Clayton's dad all had something to do with this.
Well, what makes it even more amazing is that I was in love with Clayton's youngest sister.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, that is pretty amazing.
And I didn't know John until last year. And we met on the 275th Planning Committee.
Well,
And we've taken up a solid friendship, and we're working on the Historical Society and so many other things. It's just true irony that we were almost connected,
yeah.
70 years ago, and yet we kept the iconic photographs and so forth that allowed us to fulfill that friendship and bonding all these years later.
Amazing.
So it's what can happen to people who live in a town who think they don't know anybody, and lo and behold, opportunities always come around.
Yeah.
I can't actually remember anything of the event significance, but I do know that when I was picking up nails in the driveway, I picked up a nice flint arrowhead.
Oh, no kidding. All right, that makes it worth it.
That might well have belonged to Pastor Conaway.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We don't know.
But certainly an artifact of a race long before us that lived here and prospered here and enjoyed the benefits of the land that we now live on. It reminds me of that constantly. They were our predecessors.
Oh, absolutely. They owned it all before we got here. Absolutely. So you've talked about the move and your dad and being little and everything. There's no plans to ever move this building again, right?
No, there are no plans to
Okay.
ever move this building again.
Okay. We're not talking about this building. We're talking about the Historical Society building.
On the other hand, I have no plans for tomorrow.
Oh,
So to anticipate in perpetuity is very difficult
this is true.
for
This
all
is
of
true.
us.
Yeah.
But we hope to have an established presence by the Merrimack Historical Society long after the present members are passed.
Well, it's such a building filled with history, and now it's filled with even more history, with everything you're collecting and all of the data that you and John are collecting. It's really a treasure for the town.
Well, it's not just history. We have to recognize that this was the doors of education for everybody who came through them. That building gave to them the knowledge that they needed to prosper and complete their lives. What a wonderful gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm here with Bill Listowka, who is actually John's cousin. This is all very sort of incestuous, this whole business of moving houses, in case you haven't figured that one out. So Bill, how long have you been moving houses?
50 years.
50.
Yeah.
And So how did you get into the business?
For John's dad.
John's dad,
Yes.
who keeps making sort of appearances in this film.
There you go.
We keep talking about him. So how does one, what is involved in moving a house? Well, I mean, like, what do you have to do first?
Oh, just put steel beams under it.
Okay. And those are those big steel beams?
Yes.
Or these, which ones are you talking about? The smaller ones?
Both of them. The
Okay.
big ones and the small ones.
Okay. So you raise the house up,
Raise it up.
and then you put these big steel beams.
You have to roll it off
And how do you roll it off?
on the rollers.
Okay, so there's little, we'll probably have a photo of the rollers that we'll show.
Yeah.
But under the house, I don't know if you can see it, there's some little green, they look like, almost like tiny little trolley cars or
No,
something.
roller skates. Like.
Roller skates.
Yeah.
And then it gets pushed over.
Mhm.
And then when it gets pushed over, I mean, so it's going to sit here for a while. They're going to repair the foundation.
Yes, but no one. Yeah.
And how long will that take?
Well, probably about 3 weeks.
3 weeks to do it? And then once that's done, do these beams all stay here?
No, we're gonna clean all the basement out. Everything will be
Okay.
cleaned up.
Okay. And then when it's ready to be moved back, you just do this whole thing
Reverse
in reverse order.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And is there often damage in a move like this?
Not too much, really. Some, but not too bad, really.
Okay. All right. This is just it's incredible to see the house up on stilts like this.
Yeah.
So, and you're still doing this
A little bit. Part time.
part time.
Yeah.
All right. How many house moving businesses are there in New Hampshire?
3 or 4 maybe.
Oh, 3. That's not very many at all. So you're busy.
Busy you want to be, yes.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That is good to know. All right, and you started this with John's dad.
Yeah.
So was this your first job? Moving houses?
Today? Yes.
No, not today. Oh, you're a funny one. No, I mean, did you started life off as being a housemaker?
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Wow. And I mean, it just strikes me as being very interesting that there's enough houses to move to keep you in business.
Well, stuff like this, bad foundations,
Yeah. In New Hampshire, a lot of foundations go bad.
or stone.
Yeah. So, and the plan is to remove all of this. This is, John was telling me this is cut granite,
Yes.
basically leftovers, which is why it's not very efficient. And you're going to, somebody's going to come in now and pour a foundation.
Correct. Concrete.
Concrete. Is it? Well, there must be a way to do that. You don't just, I mean, do they build walls and then pour it
Yeah,
inside?
they get forms.
They get forms, okay. And then how do you reconnect all of the utilities and wires and that kind of stuff?
Oh, the plumbers, electricians.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
Yeah.
This is not something you do lightly. But once it gets moved over, then this house should be all set.
Another 100 years, yes.
Another 100 years.
Yep.
Is this 100 years old?
Oh, it's more than that.
Do you know an age on it?
No, I think it's around 1890.
1890.
I'm just guessing, but
Well, that's just amazing. And thank goodness they're preserving it like this
Yeah.
instead of just, tearing it down. And now we're back in the studio to wrap things up. What an experience it was to see this house as it was moved and to actually stand under this house and do the interviews during a torrential rainstorm. Merrimack has a ton of stories that we were committed to telling. If you would like to contact the Merrimack Historical Society, you can go to their website, which is merrimackhistory.org. You can send them email at info@merrimackhistory.org, or you can give them a call at 603-880-4343. And now John has a special message for you.
Thank you, Wendy. The Merrimack Historical Society is starting to do something new, tell you history through video, and we want stories. And we're hoping to capture many stories from the town of Merrimack. And we hope it's going to be your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for being here. That's it for today's episode. We'll see you at the next one.